Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast. Welcome back to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast. You are going to be listening to this episode on a release date the day before the original Mothman sightings.
55
if you listen to the day it drops.
55 years.
55 years of Mothman, guys.
Can you imagine that? 55 years, dude.
Yeah.
Do you think
that is something else, isn't it?
Do you think that they even really considered that anyone would remember it for 5 days, much less 55 years?
Right. I mean, it's phenomenal. This is the 55-year anniversary of the original Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The 15th, it all kicked off and everything went crazy. Today, the day you listen to this, if you're listening on drop day, it is the 14th. And we've got a few things we're going to cover before we dive into tonight's episode, which is actually an episode that we've been wanting to do for a while. And we've actually talked about a lot of the content in this, but this is one of those ones where we said we needed to do a deep dive on the topic just to cover this measure. And tonight we are going to be talking about Valiant Thor. So we're going to get into that here in a minute, but we want to give you some updates on what we've been up to recently, because we have been absent now for what for you guys will be almost a month. As you know, if you pay attention to the social media and all that stuff, we have suffered a loss in the family, but the loss will be addressed later. We're going to talk about that at the end of the episode. And that's why we've been absent. We've also had Wild and Weird Con. So to a positive note, Wild and Weird Con was a blast.
Yes, it was.
Everybody who came had an outrageous time.
Yes.
So thank you to everybody who listens, who came. We appreciate each and every one of you guys.
Oh yeah, it was a blast. It was amazing to actually see it come to fruition. People getting to use equipment that they could only, watch in these videos and these documentaries. They got to actually do it themselves and play with that stuff and figure out how it works. And they got demos, They got lectures. And I have to say, Emily Aldrich, my goodness, the presentation that Emily gave on the giants in the mounds. If you missed it, you really did miss something epic. It blew my mind just simply because, I know enough of Emily to know that she is by the books, and some of the stuff that she put out there was like, you can't deny it now. So basically, we already said this, Emily's coming on for the next episode of Fallen Worlds, but she is also coming back to do an in-depth deep dive into the giants in the mounds. And if you hear that from a actual museum educator and author, it's something, dude. I mean, she did her research. It really
is. I wish I was able to listen to more of it. She actually came and sit in on my data retrieval and plaster casting, and she jumped in a little bit with me there on how important it is for proper collection of data, and gave some examples of in the past how it is something that the scientific community has failed at on multiple occasions. Yep. While science does strive to be at its utmost best level all the time, there are still these epic fails that occur.
Oh yeah.
These just what the layperson would almost think is unfathomable flops going to take place. Like, how did you let that happen? But it actually did happen. And we're going to let her address all those on the show, actually, so that way you guys can hear it. I don't want to run too much into that. Yeah. But we're going to let you guys listen to a little bit, seeing as how you're coming up on the anniversary. We're going to let you listen to some snippets from Jeff Wamsley's presentation of the Mothman sightings, and we're going to drop that right here.
Empty buildings, power plants and things like that. And that's where all the kids would go up and drag race. Linda told me that's what they were actually doing that night, was up there drag racing in the car and stuff. So as they were getting ready to come back into town, it was about 11 o'clock. She told me it was around 11 o'clock, no cloud, or it was a starry night, sort of brisk and cold, the way it is now, about the same type of weather. And as they were coming down one of the little back roads by the old North Power Plant, they thought what they were seeing was just a person standing in the middle of the road. And as they got closer to that figure, Linda said, "That's not a man." That's what she told the other people in the car. And she said the headlights hit the figure, the eyes were red. She said almost like a nocturnal animal. And she said it was a brilliant red. And that's when she said she saw wings come out. Now, at this point, she said that it turned and ran towards the North Power Plant. I asked her if it flew or if it ran, and she said it hobbled through the grass, very clumsily, in through the grass. So this was the first actual sighting that was recorded in Point Pleasant. In the PowerPoint that I don't have today, I had a couple other instances of some other sightings. Clendenin, West Virginia, Salem, West Virginia, and then everything kind of stayed in Point Pleasant for about 1.5 to 2 years. Now, somebody asked me a little while ago about the sightings in Chicago. You know, you have current modern day sightings in Chicago. I get emails and letters and people coming to the museum constantly from all over the world, you know, that have seen strange things that they think may be connected to the Mothman story. And that very well may be. It's just hard to validate that, especially with social media and things like that. You get a lot of people saying, well, you know, I saw this thing, and could it be the Mothman? It could be. I just am a little more versed in some of those original sightings because I was born and raised there. And then as I got older, I was able to sit down and interview and talk to a lot of those witnesses. Now keep in mind, a lot of those original witnesses, including Roger and Steve and Mary Mallett, do not want the press attention. They don't want the media attention. They would rather be left alone. They will admit that they did see it. So to me, that validates the story even more, because 55 years later, somebody would have to come forward and said, look, you know, we were all drinking that night, we made the whole story up, so let's just end it right now. But they will actually tell their family, I've talked to some of their family members, we did see it, we don't want to talk about it anymore. Right? So, anyways, but has anybody been to Point Pleasant before? Okay, most everybody has been to Point Pleasant. You know about the museum and the festival. You know about the festival not happened in the past 2 years, so we're planning on that hopefully taking place again in 2022. With everything going on, we were advised that there's too many people to concentrate in space. So if you come to Point Pleasant, it's a small town. It hasn't changed much since 1966. Everybody knows everybody, you know, good neighbors. A lot of people, you know, have the same jobs they did back in the 60s. So I always give everybody a little history of Point Pleasant. You know, it was the first battle of the Revolution took place there at Twindwee Park, which is right downtown. That's where the Ohio River meets the Kanawha River. Chief Cornstalk was a vital part of the history. He was murdered over a land dispute and supposedly cursed the town of Point Pleasant for 200 years. So some people bring that into the Mothman story. They think, you know, the Mothman, there was a jail explosion in 1976, the Silver Bridge disaster, which was the worst bridge disaster in U.S. history, happened December 15th, 1967. So a lot of people think that the Chief Cornstalk curse had a lot to do with that. Other people think that it was the Chief Cornstalk curse was made up just like the Mothman story. You have people that believe in the Mothman story. Some people thought it was just a big sandhill crane. Some people thought it was an owl. John Keel himself told me that I've seen a lot of owls, but I've never seen one that stood 5-6 feet tall. Sandhill cranes, there are a lot of those sandhill cranes up in the TNT area, but Linda told me that what they saw resembled more of a man. It didn't have skinny legs like a sandhill crane or a stork or anything. So a lot of the witnesses, what they saw, they told me, they said, look, other people might have saw a sandhill crane or an owl. That's not what we encountered, okay? So Linda Scarborough and the other three, they come back to town. They pull into Tiny's Drive-In. It's now Village Pizza, so if you ever come to Point Pleasant, you can actually go to the spot where they pulled in to let somebody know what they had encountered, okay? The guy who owned the restaurant was named Gary Northam. He still lives in Columbus. I tracked him down a few years ago and just called him out of the blue. I just wanted to talk to him for a minute. He owned the restaurant, and Linda actually worked there as a waitress at that time. And I called him up and I said, I told him who I was and everything, and I said, can you tell me a little bit about what happened that night, November 15th, 1966? And his timeline jived right with Linda's, because she said it was around 11 o'clock that they saw it. And his timeline told me it was a little bit after 11 because they closed it at 11 o'clock. He said, I was in my office, I was doing paperwork, I had a kid out there mopping the floor, somebody started banging on the windows, on the door, just carrying on banging on the door. He said, who is it? And they said, it's Linda and Roger, they want in. So he said, let them in. They came in and told him what they had saw, and he called the Sheriff's Department. That began the investigation from Mason County Sheriff's Department. So before I hung the phone up, I asked him, I said, do you believe that they saw something? And he said, I have no doubt. He said, they were white as ghosts when they came in my door. And he said, I was the one that called the Sheriff's Department. They did not want me to call the police, because they knew as soon as this happened, people would make fun of them, they call them crazy and all kinds of stuff like that. Over the next 4 to 5 months, you had over 100 reported sightings. Okay, a lot of those sightings were not reported to the police. I talk to people every day at the museum. Elderly people will come in the museum and they'll say, hey, we saw it, but we didn't want to tell anybody because we knew that people think we were crazy, So they just kept their mouth shut. 55 years later, they tell me, we saw this thing. This actually hit the newsprint. You didn't have the internet, you didn't have social media. John Keel, who was a writer in New York City, heard about this, okay? He comes to Point Pleasant to investigate, and off and on for the next 2 years, he stays in Point Pleasant, okay? And the product of his visit was the Mothman Prophecies book, which came out in 1975. The movie with Richard Gere is loosely based on the book Mothman Prophecies, okay? But it is an account of everything that happened in Point Pleasant all the way up until, 2 years later. A lot of people think that when the Silver Bridge collapsed, that all of the Mothman sightings dissipated and went away, but that's not true. I have a lot of archives and interviews and newspaper clippings from things that happened clear up into the 80s. I had people that come to me, they'll probably come to me today when I'm at the museum and say, hey, we saw something last week. It's hard for me to validate any of that stuff. So you had all kinds of people in Point Pleasant seeing strange lights in the sky. A lot of UFO activity at this time, pretty much in the tri-state area. Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky was a hotbed for flying saucers and strange lights and things like that. So some people thought whatever this was they were seeing was a product of the UFO activity.
So guys, that was phenomenal, wasn't it?
To hear that from the source, I don't need to say anything else. We could recite the Mothman legend over and over and over again. I can read it from books. I can, as many times as I want, but to hear it from the source of a guy who actually interviewed the witnesses, okay?
Yeah.
It's enough for me. I'm good.
Yeah. I mean,
there's
nobody else that could give you the story better.
No.
And
we were
Jeff
honored
Wamsley,
to
in
have
case
that
some
guy.
of you guys don't know who Jeff Wamsley is, the guy you just listened to is the gentleman who took all of the reports from the Mothman sightings, then compiled them into the Mothman Museum, who he is also the curator of the museum and the owner of the museum. Jeff is also the director and organizer of the Mothman Festival that everyone is known to come and love. And just a shout out to you, Jeff. Thank you for coming to Wild and Weird Con. It was such an honor having you there to speak.
No, it really was. Jeff's an amazing person. We had so many amazing people there. We had Seth Breedlove there, who I like to harass.
It's just fun.
It's just fun. He makes it so easy. Yeah. No, he's a great guy for real.
Dave Spinks was there.
Dave was there, and we just came off of some projects with Dave, and it was really cool. He had one of them there, and we got to actually see it, which was really, really neat.
We're going to post a link to it in the descriptors here. It is actually a link to the new cookbook that we were a part of. Cooking with Cryptids. I've got about 15 recipes in there. Ron did all of the artwork for this book, with the exception of one piece, and that was done by Jamie Snell.
There may be two I didn't.
Oh, that's right, the jackalope.
Yeah, the jackalope I did not.
Yeah, he snagged the jackalope, but
we'll show it here after a while. Actually, we'll pull it out and show you the.
We'll do some editing magic and show you.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll do some editing magic.
Then we had Eric Altman.
Yes.
So our brother Eric came down, and it was awesome actually getting to hang out with him
finally,
without having 1,000 things going on at one time, to where we were able to just sit and talk to him.
I wanted to talk more.
Yeah. And we were, Eric actually invited us to join the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. So Ron and I are now members of their research group up there in Pennsylvania. We work as an auxiliary with him, giving some support in the southern part and some of the sightings that get reported to him right on the West Virginia side. So we're honored to be a part of this new organization, and we have grafted him in as well into the collective. Yep. So welcome aboard, Eric, and thanks for bringing us on board on your team too.
That's how it works, We're working together.
It is.
That's how it works.
Absolutely. Teamwork makes the dream work, baby.
It kind of does, doesn't it? And
how cliche is that? But it's so true.
That was terrible, actually.
But then of course, we had the kind of an honorary host, I guess you could say, of Wild and Weird Radio, Jessie, and she was here from Hellbent Holler. She came in, represented Hellbent, and they helped out with the and Joe. Can't forget Joe. The other Joe, not this Joe. It's kind of
she had a name for them. I forget what she said, but she was IDing you guys. Now I don't remember how she did it. Now it was kind of funny. We'll have to ask her next time she's on the show. But yeah.
So it was great having them there. It's always it really was kind of like a big family group, honestly.
That's what it's supposed to be.
And it was so nice, even though thinking back on it, I'm like, man, I didn't get to enjoy it as much as I wish I could have in the moment, because I was just running around getting people drinks, taking care of stuff, and
setting up audio, video, and
Ron was stuck running AV.
That's okay. I'm good.
It was just, it was good times. It was good times. And it was a blast. Then we also had another just group of amazing people, the vendors that showed up, that came out and just put it out there. It was we really appreciate them.
As vendors, we know.
Yeah, we understand as vendors ourselves. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for taking the risk with us and jumping in both feet And we appreciate you guys more than you can imagine.
Yep.
Um,
It's only going to get bigger from here out.
Absolutely. Bigger, stronger, better. Now,
I've heard that before.
right. So let's go ahead and dive in to Valiant Thor.
Deep subject.
Yeah, man. So we've been looking into this for a long time. Valiant Thor is personally one of my favorite topics. If like you guys have listened to us from episode 1 forward, you've noticed that like I'm interested in the alien phenomena, the UFO phenomena, but there's certain ones that really grab me. And it's because there's that flesh and blood aspect that's in your face and you really can't deny some of it. And one of those just happens to be the visitor at the Pentagon himself, good old Val.
Yep, good old Val, right? And what a story that is. And we know all this from author Frank E. Stranges, which is a great name, isn't it? Stranges.
Yeah, it really is. Like, that's got to be some kind of pen name.
It has to
be. And if
be.
it's not, it's the greatest name ever.
If it's not, it's one heck of a coincidence. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
But according to Frank, I'm just going to call him Frank because his name's strange enough. The story is like straight out of sci-fi, right? I mean, pretty much. You have a craft that lands in Alexandria, Virginia, March 16th, 1957. This UFO lands, and this guy gets out. There are 3 other occupants in the craft, but this one guy gets out, and he approaches these officers who are coming at him with their pistols drawn, and speaks to them telepathically, saying, he means them no harm, and that he basically wants to speak to the president.
And we have this similar thing happen again later down the line in the year 1966 with that telepathic communication, these correlations again, where you have a guy getting out of a ship, someone who's freaked out, and if they had a weapon, probably would have drew the weapon.
Yeah.
But was telepathically spoken to and said, I mean you no harm, don't be afraid. And then wrapped it up with tell the authorities.
Yeah. And let's not forget another important part about old Val. He was smiling when he did this.
He was.
Just saying.
He was smiling.
I am just saying.
And
you'll see some correlations later where you'll
some crazy correlations between Valiant Thor and Indrid Cold.
It's weird.
And anyway, this guy, this wasn't just like a one-time visit. He showed up and said, I need to speak with the president. That's kind of bold.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of where that whole take me to your leader thing, I guess. And take me to your leader. He's just like, yeah, I need to speak with the president, please.
And apparently they did exactly what he commanded. And which kind of means that in my opinion, they were probably under some alien, manipulation there or something,
or they were expecting it.
Or they were expecting it, that it was already prearranged. Why do you think they didn't fire on a ship that landed
exactly?
in Virginia?
Why do you think a squadron of fighters weren't launched towards Alexandria? Because we had them at the time, guys. So he gets off the craft, and so he asked to speak to the president. There was a room set aside for this guy in the Pentagon.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, allegedly he was given his own room, right? And not just a room, but like this really lavish thing.
Yeah, he had a suite.
Yeah, a suite. But before all
that... He had a suite that was normally given to foreign diplomats.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. But he wanted to meet with the president. And instead, they took him to, was it Secretary of Defense? He met with him. And he must have said something right because they took him straight to the president at that point. And Nixon and the Joint Chiefs of Staff were in there. And they had this first communication, the first, I guess, meeting, the first contact.
Yep.
And according to Frank, according to Frank. I'm not saying that name again. According to Frank, the president asked Thor where he was from. And what's really curious is how he answers that question. He doesn't say, I'm from Venus, as some people believe. He says, I am from what your Bible refers to as the morning and evening star. At that time, Eisenhower asked, do you mean Venus? And he replied, yes, sir. So,
Yeah.
and we see this with Thor. There's a lot of earth religion that he speaks of, and a lot of spirituality that he speaks of.
Which, in a way, ties into some of this ancient astronaut theory. A lot of ancient astronaut theorists look at the Valiant Thor, I guess, contact experience, we'll call it. And they view some of the things that he says as, you know, whenever they start asking where he's from, instead of him naming a planet right off the bat, he says that I'm from the star, or I'm from the star that you refer to, or from the place you refer to as the morning star. And of course, that we know what that is. That's Venus. So when they responded, you mean Venus? He was like, yes, sir. That is where I'm from. Now, he wasn't the one to say that he was a Venusian.
No.
That was a title that was placed on him because of where he was saying he was from. So he looked like us. That's another thing. There were a lot of people who saw Valiant Thor. He attended meetings with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He talked about peace. He talked about destruction if there was no peace. He talked about all of these things that we were plunging ourselves into the future. Not that we were in them right then in that moment, but he started telling our government leaders what track we were on.
Yep.
And boy, oh boy, if you actually listen to this guy, if you listen to what he was saying, let's just hypothetically say that he was not an alien, that this whole spaceship thing was contrived and some kind of mass hallucination. He was dead on. From 65 years ago, he was dead on where our society was heading, and as a whole, not just American society, but global society, and what was going to happen to our planet if we didn't make the changes that we needed to make.
Yep. He basically said that he lived, I guess on Venus underground. He didn't really say, Venus, of course, but he said, So they have a base is what it came down to. And he claimed to be from the high or central or high council. It depends on which version you read of intergalactic beings, and said that they had watched Earth for hundreds of years. He also said that there were many more who did the same. Some that were good, some that were not so good, from what I understand.
And this council, the principle of this council and things of that nature was what Star Trek would be modeled off of years later by Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah,
he would take these words.
Star Trek. That's right. Yeah.
And he would turn those in, and that was what became the Galactic Federation.
Yep, that was Starfleet is what that was. And the Galactic Federation will come up later.
We'll just momentarily.
Yeah,
we're almost there.
You jumped the gun on that one. You little spoiler alert there. But either way, he was a very interesting person. He spoke a lot about biblical matters. But did he, or was that just Frank? Because Frank was he
was a chaplain.
Yes, he was a chaplain, and supposedly he had this top secret clearance, and he could, go in and meet with Thor. But what's funny is he didn't really have clearance to meet with Thor. They kind of pulled the old wool over the eye and used some Jedi mind trick kind of stuff, and that's how he had his meeting with Thor. But I think it was really interesting in the part where the president asks. Or actually, Thor asked, the president asked for proof from Thor, and Thor said, well, what would constitute proof? And Eisenhower replied, I don't know. And then Thor invites him to aboard his ship, Like, come on down, I'll show you. It's it's parked there, and but of course Eisenhower's like, no, I can't do that. There's security measures. So hey, why don't you just stay with us for a while, and we'll get all this sorted out and figure out what's going on, right?
And that's when he was put up in the Pentagon.
That's when he's put up in the Pentagon. They said that Nixon actually came over to him and started talking to him at that point and asking him if he was responsible for the DC flap. And that's when Val assured them that Earth had been under observation for hundreds of years, even before the atomic bomb test in 1945, which is what they thought had. Remember, everyone thinks this. Everyone thinks that
they thought that it triggered it.
Yeah, which it may have. It may have got some species.
It probably showed up on a radar blip somewhere, but.
Yeah.
But this type of activity, if you listen to, anything on the History Channel. So if you listen to Von Daniken, if you listen to Jacques Vallée, then you see that these things were taking place here for thousands of years. There were these kind of contact experiences that have been on Earth forever. Mm-hmm. As long as we've been a rock spinning in space, there's something has visited us.
Well, what about the Watchers, Joe?
Yeah.
Just saying.
So, yeah, the Watchers from the Book of Enoch and the Book of the Giants. You've got something, and aliens, angels, whatever you want to call them, it's hard to put a label on it anymore. When you start researching this stuff and reading into it, they show up with the same few words. I mean you no harm. There's a consistency there for thousands of years, but then they're also warning you of a group of that will mean you harm and will rock your world.
No, it's true.
So
it's absolutely true. Yeah.
And Val said the same thing, like you were saying earlier, that some of them are peaceful, some of them not so peaceful.
Yeah, it's true.
So this led into some major meetings. Mm-hmm. And they started talking about where he came from. They started doing these deep examinations of even the clothes that he was wearing.
Which is fascinating, by the way. Yeah. And maybe another correlation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because you have this same kind of clothes being reported that are very similar to the clothing that was reported being worn by Indrid Cold.
Yeah, it was shiny. It was a shiny one-piece suit that was, and the whole Indrid Cold thing, he had that underneath his I believe it was his coveralls or whatever they said. Again, two different accounts, but either way, there was always shiny material, like almost what we would call a holographic.
And this material had a lot of very special properties. They had tested a diamond drill bit, and it snapped. They'd poured acid on it, and it beat it up like water and rolled off. They couldn't penetrate it with bullets. It was soft and silver colored, and had a gold lustrous hue to it. And it was of unknown origins.
He said it was like liquid sunlight.
Yeah. And it was incredibly light. The entire outfit weighed 6 ounces, including the boots.
That's right.
My boots by themselves, now mind you, I've got huge feet. My boots weigh like 3 pounds.
Yes.
So I can't imagine what it's like to have 6 ounce boots. If I could just get boots that weighed 6 ounces, I'd be tickled.
Right. I mean, 6 ounces for the whole clothing and the boots.
Yeah.
And the clothing was when Frank met with him, Joe, he also said that he held up the suit and let him see it. And he saw no visible seams, There were no zippers. There were no way to fasten this thing. There was no opening. And Val just simply put his hand over it, and it smoothed out. Like it sounds like magic. I mean,
almost like had some kind of memory.
Yep. Almost like
it was like intelligent clothing.
Yeah, exactly. So
and today,
we're getting there, right?
Today we have materials that are very similar to that, don't we?
We're getting there, aren't we?
We have materials that have memory, that have they're impenetrable. You can't break them, but they have this kind of elastic memory, and they come right back to the positions that they were in once you tried to do whatever you were doing to it.
Yep.
So we had tons of witnesses. They've examined his clothes, and then
What's the most
He went
famous,
on.
the
What is it?
most famous thing about Thor is that photograph.
Oh yeah,
That is probably the best piece of evidence. And you see the photograph. I mean, we'll link to something on the photograph as well. But
yeah.
that photograph was taken at a UFO convention, which was actually a secret UFO convention, more like a conference that was held in
It
New
was.
Jersey in 1957. I'm not sure if the president was in attendance or not. I couldn't find that out, but it kind of sounded like either he was there or he was made aware of it.
Yeah, and it it was a very very weird instance. Now, something else that I also found was really really weird, and I think that this kind of goes into where a lot of the critics of Strange's work um, start to pick things apart. Is where Strange's says that Thor told him that he had come to help mankind return to the Lord,
Yeah, yeah,
and that he was always positive. He always had a smile on his face. And he said that man was further away from God than ever before, but there was still a chance. And that only a few leaders would listen to his advice. And he told Frank that Jesus Christ would not force men to be saved from their mistakes, which, that's what we preach. It's what
yeah. But you,
Jesus Christ will not force you,
but you don't get that from
that
an
whole thing.
alien, typically.
And so you're getting that from an alien, and it's kind of like, what do you do with that? Was that Strange's interpreting and putting his own stuff
Right,
in there, trying to make sense of an alien,
right.
and trying to tie it all in,
Or is it how he
or
perceived
what?
it, the message
Yeah,
itself? Because we have to also say this. Um, this wasn't a physical communication, Joe. This was telepathy.
this was telepathic. It was
So
they're
was
communicating
he
with their mind,
right? So again, was that just Frank interpreting all this through his own belief system,
right? And
so
was
it
it all
made
just
sense?
perception?
Mm-hmm. So that it made sense,
Now,
or was it actually what Thor was saying? I mean, I don't know. It's a mystery. It's a complete mystery, and it's pretty amazing. But at that,
so
go
another
ahead.
weird thing that kind of ties back into numerology, religion, and all that. Thor was asked how many other Venusians were out there. Well, he didn't tell him how many Venusians were actually out and about, but he said that there are currently 77 of them in the US alone, constantly coming and going. 77, 7 is a number of perfection. So again, you're looking at different religious aspects and numerological aspects of things. Um, and then Thor would begin to tell people about himself. He was starting to try to tell people who he was, and this wasn't just like a short meeting. He was here for a while.
He was here for three
You
years.
started getting, what is it?
He was here for 3 years. And
Yeah,
what was
3 years.
amazing about it, that, everyone thinks that they had this guy locked up for 3 years in this lavish hotel, like it was a federal prison or something, right? But
Yeah,
they say that Thor could just come and go as he pleased. Even if the doors were locked, he could just simply dematerialize. Now later
and
on,
go through.
and later on we find out that that is exactly what he was doing. And during those 3 years, when the U.S. wouldn't accept his plan, and by the way, Thor's plan, we'll go over that in a second. But
Thor,
when the U.S. said no, he shopped it around, and he allegedly visited people who had a little bit more of an open mind. So
yeah,
he was actually being an ambassador, basically, for 3 years, is what he was doing, and trying to
yep,
get the message out. And the message was that humans were going to eventually eradicate themselves with their stupidity.
with their new toys
Yes,
that go boom.
exactly. But he wasn't alone. Remember, and at that meeting that the picture was taken, he had his crew with him, and I love
Yeah,
his crew: Don, Jill, and Tanya. Okay, I don't know, but that was it. That's supposedly, and they were dressed just like everyone else at the time. Um, August C. Roberts is who took that famous photograph, and he said that he took it candidly. That that Val didn't know he took it. But then when he met with Val, he had this weird feeling of remorse, like he did something that, you know, he didn't want.
He did something wrong.
Yeah, he did something wrong, like, oh, geez, this alien's going to kill me or something. I don't know. I guess he thought Val knew, and he probably did know, to be honest. But if you look at the photo, you'll see him holding some papers, right?
Yeah.
Well, those papers are supposed to be the documentation from the High Council and the gift to humanity that the president refused on the grounds that it would plunge the country into chaos.
Yep.
And there's more on that too. But allegedly, he basically came here, supposedly, with a cure for everything, pretty much, right? Kind of like V. Isn't that what V was? They came with a cure for everything, and then they ate us. But I don't know if they were going to eat us or not. But
right.
But yeah, he came to cure everything, which is pretty crazy, and he was turned down.
And what was the thing that he was offering? The cure, the technology, all of this stuff, on the condition that we did what?
We just had to be peaceful, pretty much, and return to God, as he said it. But if we have to think about that, let's think about that whole return to God thing, and let's not use religion in that. And let's think about what that really means, that it's fundamental basics.
Yeah.
It means
return to a position of loving one another.
Yeah. Giving a crap about
being
each other.
Peaceful.
Right. Something we have, it's an alien
caring
term.
for one another.
Yeah. That. Yes.
Ignoring the differences that we have with one another, and actually embracing one another regardless of their differences, and being willing to extend their hand to help anyone in need.
Yep. That's pretty much it. And the direct quote, let me find the direct quote for you, because it's really good. So Eisenhower wanted to come out and tell the public all of this. Okay.
Yeah.
Like he wanted the plan. He wanted to accept it. He was like, okay, I mean, let's do it. Let's try to save the world, because let's be honest, guys, it's 1957. Things were starting to get bad here. Like, really bad. You think they're bad now, but this was nuclear bad.
Cold War.
Yeah. There's a whole different level of bad when you think about, a big white flash, and that's the end of everything.
All over.
Yeah, exactly. And so here's this alien. He offers to give them information on how people could live without sickness, poverty, disease, and even death. And allegedly, he was told, we cannot accept this information, which you are freely, note that word, freely giving us, because it will ruin the economy of this country. Not this earth, this country. And also note the stipulation, freely.
Yeah.
So.
And on top of that, Eisenhower himself was apparently wanting to accept the offer.
He did want to accept it.
But he was opposed by the people on the Joint Chiefs of Staff and his cabinet.
Yep.
And they were saying that if Val's plan were released, that people would likely choose to follow him rather than the government, and it would lead to chaos. We've heard this story before.
Haven't we?
There was this dude that rode in on the back of a donkey into Jerusalem, and the whole world turned upside down for a hot minute. So yeah, we've heard this story before.
Yeah, isn't it crazy though? I mean, for real, is this not crazy?
There's so many correlations. It's one of the things that's interested me about this from the get-go. There's correlations to other contact events. There's correlations to what we've seen in Scripture. There's correlations to what we're taught in Sunday school. There's correlations to all of these sci-fi shows that came out after the fact.
Yep.
It's just crazy.
Mind-numbing, isn't it?
And then when you start looking into it, there are people who validated this, like the nephew of Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
Oh, yeah,
he was
right.
DOD from 57 to 63.
Yeah.
And his nephew said that basically his nephew validated the stories. And coincidentally, Byrd was assigned to Project Blue Book.
That's right. This all just kind of goes into this weird place where you're like, this is the craziest story someone has made
It
up.
is.
And then you hear like all these validations and there's a photo. Okay. And
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, this has got to be one of the craziest stories that you're going to get down into. And if I really wanted to believe one, Bud, this would be one I would want to believe. I would want to believe that
Right.
there is a benevolent race of aliens out there who are trying to keep humanity from destroying themselves. So you've got those crazy correlations running through this whole thing. I mean,
Yep.
and I thought it was really fascinating about the fact that there were so many checks under this guy in Indrid Cold. I mean,
Yeah.
that was kind of weird. Other than you have Cold, who's from Lanulos. But you have to remember, Woody also visited Venus.
Yeah.
So he says.
Woody got around according
I
to
don't know.
according to what he
I'm
says. I
just
mean,
quoting what he
was
you
it
know,
actually him going? Was it some kind of OBE? Was it just some
Right.
bad pizza that he ate one night?
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, there was pizza, so it could
That
have.
there's so much around Woody and his story that just Woody damages his own story.
He does. He does.
If that makes sense.
I don't deny his story though, just based on other contact type experiences and the brain scramble. So
yeah.
and it's kind of like this guy. He's interpreting
So-
this thing the way he knows it.
Before we go any further with some of these things that are tying all together, we want to give a shout out to what we have now finally found the official coffee of Wild and Weird Radio. And that is
I haven't drank mine yet.
Coffee with Cryptids.
I haven't did it yet. I'll do it by the next one.
We've got the Bigfoot Bold.
I'm so sad.
I've got my cup right here that I've been drinking on. This stuff's awesome. So highly recommend. Go check out Creep Geeks. Check them out on Facebook.
Did you have to
Tell
really
them it's
think about their
coffee.
name? Really?
Well,
You-
they
you
have
had
like
to
three
really?
names. There's Cheap Geeks, Creep Geeks, and something else Geeks, because they got their hands. They're like us. They've got their hands in everything, and they do like tech reviews and all that stuff. So get a hold of them at Creep Geeks.
Creep Geeks. Just you'll find them.
And you will not regret it. This
You'll
stuff's
find 'em.
phenomenal coffee.
You can find links
It's-
on our site too.
Yeah, it's small batch roasted. They actually get to pick the beans themselves. It's phenomenal. Okay, back to the correlations.
I'm not going to be picking beans. Okay. Anyway, back to that's dedication. Anyway, back to Thor. I just love that name, by the way.
I know,
great.
right?
It's a great name.
It's a great name.
It's a great name.
So we start looking, and we talk about the sci-fi tones and how this whole story even influenced so many, from Star Trek to Stargate.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's influence. There's V that was influenced.
Yeah. A
So
little bit.
many
You can see that.
So many different sci-fi shows that this encounter had influenced, and Thor, which was a he was a gray alien.
Oh, you mean it's a Stargate, right?
Term.
SG-1?
What is it?
SG-1?
Yeah, an SG-1.
Oh, yeah, an SG-1. Yeah, that was no question.
And he was the supreme commander of the Asgard fleet.
Yep.
And he was given the personality of Valiant Thor, really.
He really was. Friendly. Friendly,
Yeah, friendly, peace-loving, encouraging to mankind, telling us to be peaceful and not go break stuff.
Oh, well,
and
he gave us
save our
weapons.
tail-ends a few times.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say he gave us weapons to fight the gold. So, kind of peaceful.
And then Val said that he was coming back, that there would be other visitations and all of that would happen. And sure enough, we don't know exactly who it was, but in 1973, the Holloman Air Force Base, that whole
story.
incident.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, guys,
Yep.
It's weird stuff. And I'm going to go with another correlation. I'm going back to Cold on this. And here's why I'm going back to Cold. Indrid Cold was a searcher.
Indrid Cold? Oh, yeah.
What was he searching for?
Searcher.
I know there's some of these people who think, he was searching for Mothman. No, he wasn't. Trust me, he probably wasn't searching for Mothman. Okay,
Right.
but could he have been searching for others of the 77? Could he
He
have
could have
been
either been
searching?
searching for others of the 77, or like the way I took it was that he was searching for other civilizations who were peaceful
Well, that's what
and
I
who
took it
could
as
be
too.
peaceful.
But what if it wasn't that?
Yeah. What if Indrid Cold was hunting the 77?
Just saying, it makes a heck of a story, doesn't it? I
It
mean,
does. That'd be a good movie by
let's
itself.
think about that. This one guy shows up, he's all peaceful. Which one's which? Which one's the good guy? Which one's the bad guy? You don't know. You're
They
caught in the
both
middle.
and they look like us. They all look like
They
us.
always do. The ones that cause the most controversy look like us. You ever notice that? Like gray
Yeah.
aliens, the whole, the Zeta
Everybody's
Reticulum
just
thing.
creeped out by it.
Yeah, it's creeped out loud. They're just going to abduct you and do weird stuff. Okay, well, that's done. We know what they do, but it's these other guys. It's like, well, we can kind of trust them, but can we really? I mean, what do we know about those guys? They look like us. They can read our minds. They
Yeah.
can make us see things. They can pull Jedi mind tricks on us.
And those kind of things, what you just said, are what Luis Elizondo believes to have caused these deep factions that exist within the Pentagon that deeply
That's right.
in their hearts believe that the UFO UAP phenomena is evil and has a diabolical nature. And there's not just people in the Pentagon who believe that. There's people who are in Congress who believe that these UFOs are diabolical in nature. And guess what? Most of those guys have been around forever. They're fossils in Congress. And they were around when all of this stuff was happening.
And when it
Believe
was
it or
deemed
not.
as evil, probably. Because,
Yeah, probably.
we did deem things as evil back in the 50s and so forth when we didn't.
Yeah.
This is back in a time when humans were, going to Sunday school. If you didn't go to Sunday school, there's something wrong with you, right? I mean, the 40s and 50s. So, you're probably a drunkard. Oh, shame on you.
Well, we're looking up here. We're going to bring it up into current day. And looking at a release that was dropped in December 8th, 2020. And we're talking about,
What's that release say, Joe? I'm just curious. What did you?
it said that cooperation agreements had been signed between species, including an underground base in the depths of Mars, and where there are American astronauts and alien representatives. Harkens back to the whole, look back 10,000 years ago into the past onto Mars in this exact location. What do you see? And we talked about that came out in the CIA dump about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And said there's an agreement between the U.S. government and the aliens. They signed a contract with us to do experiments here. So
here's what we do know. If that's the case, it wasn't with Thor's people.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Right.
if it's true, then it wasn't with Thor's people. So who was it signed with?
And it was an agreement with God knows who.
Exactly. Or what?
And then Ishad said that President Trump was aware of the extraterrestrials' existence and had been on the verge of revealing information, but was asked not to in order to prevent mass hysteria.
Oh, and we have to.
We actually talked about this.
We did. We talked about this, and we have to bring this back up. This isn't just a guy, Joe. This is the former Israeli space security chief that dropped this bomb, by the way. And that was, like you said, in December 8th of 2020. And boy, was there a lot of UAP, UFO stuff going on then, right?
There was a whole slew, and you can actually go back in time and listen into our in-time report of all of the craziness that was breaking loose in December of last year. It was bonkers.
It really was. And so this guy basically comes out and says, hey, yeah, UFOs are not only real, but, well, there's this, there's this group. and everyone's like thinking this guy's lost his mind. But really, no. It's kind of chilling, isn't it, when you get down into it and read some of the things that he says?
It is. It is, because a lot of it correlated right back to everything that Valiant Thor had already told us.
Yeah.
It essentially verified what was being said about Valiant Thor at the time. And it leaves us now in this position where we have to make up our own minds and look at this stuff in a way that's objective.
Mm-hmm.
We have data. A lot of the data is argued about. Like, Strange's had his own bents with religion. He had his own belief systems, like you had talked about just a bit ago, that he was tangled up in. And again, just for new listeners, when we say belief systems, we're not talking about religion. We're talking about something in your mind that is fixated on a singularity point.
Yep. And you can't move
that
beyond
everything in your thought process kind of revolves around, like the sun.
Yep. And
we have to dismiss that to be credible researchers and to really take a deep look. Because if we don't, that kind of structure in our mind can actually obscure what we're viewing. It'll skew the data, and we don't want that. We want unbiased data. So we have to look at this stuff all on the table through an unbiased eye.
Yep.
So this was something, obviously, the Strangers was incapable of.
No, absolutely. He was completely eat up. I mean, but him aside, Joe, I mean, really, what really put the whole Thor thing back on for me was when Ashed, whoever, how you want to say his name, he comes out and releases this stuff. And he says, they have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are, as she said, referring to the Galactic Federation.
Yep.
Galactic Federation, really? Central High Command. It's the same. These are the same things with different words. But he also goes on to say that we're not ready. And that basically they said, nope, you're not ready, and we'll check back in with you later.
So let's just hope you don't destroy yourself between now and then.
I don't know.
In my opinion, man, I think we are in this weird state of limbo at the moment where something is brewing. There's something on the horizon.
There's something on the horizon.
In more ways than one.
Yes. And there's two forces here that seem to be trying to stop this something, isn't there? Because we heard it right there with the whole claim that Frank made with Nixon and Joint Chiefs of Staffs and whoever said, well, we can't reveal this, right? And then we heard it with Luis Elizondo, who said that, no, these things are evil, so let's just stay away from it. So, and then we heard it with Sheed said that he added during this time that when Trump was president, he was aware of the extraterrestrials' existence and had been, quote, on the verge of revealing information, but was asked not to in order to prevent mass hysteria. Again, we have these people who are making these decisions that are higher than the president and overruling the president on his decision. So that's just the president, though. They have to remember, we're talking about a world thing here. This is the Earth. Yep. This isn't for one person to make such a decision. So who calls the shots when it comes to an entire global contact?
Well, that was gross. Excuse my dog. If you think back to Reagan, he often mentioned the one thing that would draw all of us back together was an outside of this world threat.
Outside alien threat.
Yeah.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
So there's something, I believe, that if we were faced with that, there would be some kind of unified response, some kind of action that would be taken.
Yeah, I would hope that people would, join together, ID4 style,
right,
kind of like that.
You'd have somebody, the president, go out there and give this big speech.
Yes,
we're gonna take back our independence from the aliens.
Yeah, but no, probably not. Yeah. Probably not.
So, no, we're too busy throwing sticks at each other and yelling and getting offended on everything.
Yeah, we really are, aren't we?
So
in a way,
until we get past that stuff, we are going to be in trouble if anything does happen.
Oh, I do believe that. And I do believe, again, I'll say it again, James Webb is getting ready to go up. We've got the whole Mars thing going on right now. It's just a matter of time before someone validates the fact that there is a signal or there's something out there. Okay. And when that happens,
James Webb satellite is very significant.
it's very significant. It has been very significant. It's a huge part of this. So I just tell you, and if you listen to the old episodes, you'll hear where I say it. It's the same thing. It won't be a close discovery. It can't be. It will be a far away discovery, a remote chance that something's out there. But it'll be a discovery nonetheless, and it will change things.
Yeah.
And that'll be the first, in my opinion, how it, how humanity realizes that it's not as special as it thinks it is.
Well, guys, now that we've kind of wrapped up this episode here, go ahead and sound off on the Wild and Weird Facebook page on what some of your theories are behind Valiant Thor. Let's get a conversation going, because this one is a really deep subject that really deserves conversation.
Really is. Load of crap or real? I mean, that's what it comes down to.
So you guys feel free to weigh in over on the page or over on the Wild and Weird West Virginia Talk group page. Either one is fine.
Or right here on the YouTube, you can do that too. Comment,
right down below in the comments. You can get involved right now. Let's talk it out. Let's have let's see what's going on in your all's minds with around this topic, because it is such a bizarre incident, and it didn't just, it was a 3-year long period. This wasn't like, here was a ship, there was a dude, then there wasn't a dude or a ship, and then they didn't come back. This was like, hey, what's up? Let's go get dinner for the next 3 years.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna hang out here. I need a room. And it's really interesting because there's so much stuff that a lot of people up until a couple years ago were giving this whole experience a lot of flack, saying this, that, and the other about it, because there are some belief system entanglements. And that was their main source of the argument. However, we've been given since 2020 a lot of data that really backs up a whole lot of this stuff that was said, a lot of the actions, especially about how let's sign a treaty, let's sign some kind of an agreement, and we'll give you a thing. We're seeing some of this stuff being talked about. We're seeing a lot of these behaviors that were rumored from our government back then towards the UFO, UAP phenomena actually being legitimate, and people thinking they're supernatural, demonic, whatever you want to call them. So sound off below, guys. We're really interested to hear what you guys have to think about this one. It's a really, really wild topic.
Do you think Thor's still out there? That's what I want to know. What do you think, Joe? You think Thor's still out there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
somebody like Thor, I should say, like a representative. Do you think they're actually, or do you think they just did
like
what
to
Thor
hope
did?
So. I mean, if you're looking at something that's like a galactic federation,
yeah,
then there'd almost have to be. You're going to have these ambassador-like types, right? Because I mean, if we look at just on our rock, what we do, every country has its own ambassadors that we send out, and like the only time we stop sending out ambassadors are when we stop existing. So
that's a good point.
Unless there's been some kind of annihilation, I would assume that there probably are. I'm curious as to how many there would be now at this point.
Yeah.
So let us know what you guys think below, guys. We want to hear what your thoughts are. If you want to keep supporting Wild and Weird Radio, just head on over to wildandweirdwv.com.
Oh, wait, no, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You got to use your Venusian thing. You want to. You want to. Not if you want to. You want to support Wild
it's Mothman Days,
Radio.
So we're running a discount in the shop.
Oh, that's right.
All the Mothman stuff is on sale, so head on over there. You can grab yours tonight even, and it'll be shipped out later. So, and that helps support the show and keep it free for eons to come. If you want to keep listening to more Wild and Weird content, head on over to our YouTube, Wild and Weird WV on YouTube, or you can just stay on wildandweirdwv.com and go over to the podcast tab, slap that baby, and listen away to your heart's content to all the episodes that we've uploaded. They're all there. It's archived. Go for it, guys. We've missed the last 2 weeks, 3, 4, almost a month, 3 weeks. So you've got everything from before then is loaded, and then the new episode that you're listening to right now. So thanks for listening, guys. And before we sign off tonight, we just want to take a minute. We're going to have Wayne's daughter on next week to talk a little bit and address you guys just for a brief few minutes. But you guys know that Wayne Barnes was very important to this show. He was our third co-host, and he was the probably most open-minded person that we had with us, that we could have had with us, rather, because he came into the show and had a lot of his own thoughts about stuff, but began to experience things in a different way, and began, once he started researching, to actually get more open-minded and looking at these possibilities of all things wild and weird out there, and made the show better for it. He asked the questions that you guys would ask a lot of the times, and he was crucial to a lot of the guests that we had on the show. He did a lot of our booking. He was our brother, and he will be greatly missed. So, you know, if you guys are out there listening, you have no idea how much you guys actually meant to Wayne.
Oh, God, yeah.
I know.
He joked about it all the time. I bet, yeah.
He joked about it, talking about giving everybody autographs and all of that stuff. And if you have one of his autographs already, yeah, the price just went up.
Yeah, I've got mine.
So we're going to miss him dearly. He was a brother. And after he passed, we kind of fought like in ourselves what was going to go on, how this was going to look moving forward. And Ron designed a new rebranding for Wild and Weird Radio, and we are moving forward because that was one of the things that Wayne told us when he first got sick, was that regardless what happened and how everything went and shook out, that he didn't want us to stop doing what we were doing, that he wanted us to keep going forward, and he wanted us to keep pressing on with the show and keep the show going, because this show meant a lot to him. It was a weekly getaway from everything else, just like it is for all of you guys and us. Yeah. It's our little hour and a half getaway from all the chaos in life. And we appreciate you let us be a part of your life, and that you let us be a way for you to escape some from all of the chaos that's going on around you. And you listen to the things that we're talking about in our research, and you've come along with us on this journey. And rest assured, we are moving forward. Wild and Weird Radio isn't going anywhere anytime soon. We're here to stay. And in memory of Wayne, we're going to be stuck around here for a long time.
Yeah.
And we're just going to keep plugging at it.
It's a legacy now, so, you know.
It is. And so, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for allowing us to be a part of your life. You have no idea how much it means to us, because we've taken the time off to reflect, and we missed being on here. We've seen how valuable, not just to our lives that this show has become, but to other people who've been reaching out to us and asking us and asking how we were doing and checking on Wayne's family. And on top of that, how many of you guys supported Wayne's daughter?
Oh, yeah.
With the funeral expenses and everything. Thank you guys so much. You guys helped lift a lot of a burden. And so thank you guys for coming through for him. Thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts for listening to the show. And, you know, we might break out the obelisk and try to summon Wayne soon.
So, one day.
Anything.
It could happen, you know.
So, you know, I guess this is us signing off for tonight. It's a little bit different than usual sign off. So,
we'll get a new one. Don't worry. It'll come.
Yeah.
It'll come.
Stay wild and weird, everybody.